Hello and welcome. By now, everybody knows about the Spellbinders BetterPress system, and we've got three camps. You either already bought it, you're on the fence, or you're like, nah fam, not for me. Well, luckily in today's video, believe it or not, I've got a little something for all y'all. Let's start with a quick rundown of what you'll get with your BetterPress Letterpress system. Now, this is the $79.99 one. There is a higher priced one that comes with a few more items. But in this basic set, you will get the clear platen here that is marked with an A2 and an A7 grid, and a matching grid is marked on your magnetic base here. This is to help you line up your paper and your plates, and you will see that here when we demonstrate. Underneath that, you have your shims. Now, there are 3 thin shims included in here. This is brilliant. All right, so here they recommend you use all 3 shims underneath for the paper that they have specially formulated for this. But having these shims allows you to use your own papers that may be slightly thicker, and all you would need to do is remove a shim or 2 to get the correct amount of pressure to work with the paper that you're using. This is amazing because it really opens up the substrates that you can use in here. Additionally, in the set, you will get 3 papers. So you get 3 colors, 5 each for a total of 15 in bisque, pebble, and porcelain. You'll also get a specially formulated ink here. This is their black letterpress ink. Mine doesn't have a label because again, they sent me a sample. They were kind enough to let me test this out, but yours will have a label. You also get this exclusive plate with this particular set, and it is gorgeous. So you have everything you need to be off and running as soon as you order this particular system. All right, so let's look at using the system. This may be your first video, it may not be, but I'm going to point out some of my tips and tricks, what I have discovered using this so far. Now, I have my magnetic base here. I'm laying my BetterPress onto the plate where I want it to be on my A2 card. You can see there when I lifted that up, that plate is not budging. That magnetic plate holds everything in place. And when I lay my card panel down here on top, I'm going to center it on that grid that is marked on that base. Now remember, everything is going to be mirrored. So although that plate is appearing right now on the lower right-hand side, it's going to be a mirror image. So when I flip this over, that's going to be on the lower left-hand side. Now in the kit, you also get some craft tape. It's the yellow craft tape. Again, they were kind enough to send me an early sample of the system, so I do not have that. I'm using some washi tape. Now, they recommend taping the corners from the front. This is how I do it, and I do it for every single one of my plates. I roll over some washi tape, and I put it on the back of my paper. I press the plate down to grab the paper and lift it up. Again, I do this regardless if it's a full plate or not. This is the way that works best for me because washi tape, if you tape it on the corners of a good watercolor paper fibers are looser, and 99% of the time your washi tape is going to tear it. I just find it easier to always tape from the back. All right, so now we are going to ink up our plate. We're using their special formulated ink here, and they worked with Ranger. It is very similar to their archival ink formula. They just formulated this with a little bit more, to be a little more viscous. It's a little bit thicker so that it adheres to this plate really well. You will not have any beading up or any bare spots on your plate. They recommend the pivot and pounce, the pounce and pivot method. And that's what I'm demonstrating here. You do not need to mash this pad. Do not mash this pad into this plate. You will force ink all into the grooves. That's not necessary. A light but firm tap, tap, tap will do. And the detail in these plates is so fine, so amazing. I am in love with this system. It has been a long time since I have loved something like this. So here you can see I just turned that plate over, and the magnetic corners there just caught it and pulled it right into place. And my plate is not touching my paper at this time. It is being held up on the springs on each of the 4 corners. I'm going to place that into my Platinum 6 here, and I'm going to roll it through. As it rolls through, it's going to push that plate to make contact with the paper, and it's going to impress it and transfer the ink. Now, when you pull this off, do not squeeze it from the sides. Lay it onto your palm, push it through, or roll it back the other way and grab the handle. And here you can see that beautiful impression. Here, I will hold this up to the camera for you. Look at all of that detail and that perfect transfer of that graphic there. It is beautiful. And you can see all of that detail from the impression that it made as well. Now, because we're working on watercolor cardstock, that means we can watercolor this because that ink is waterproof. That is the one thing that I absolutely love about this system. You guys already know I'm a watercolorist. When they said they were doing letterpress, I was like, dude, I'm on board. Absolutely. I will love to try it. So here I'm going to show you how you can quickly mirror an image. I'm going to ink this up again using that same method, and then I will rotate my platen. I'm never going to keep remembering to keep that word straight, just so you know. Might just end up clear plate, but I'm going to try. So I'm going to ink this up, make sure I've got good coverage. Then I'm going to grab that platen and I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. All right, so instead of putting it back in that same place, I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. Those magnets are going to catch it, click it right into place, and then I'm going to send this through my Platinum 6 again. Now, I was talking about watercolor. So let's talk about this watercolor paper. Y'all, this is good watercolor paper. I'm picky, extremely picky. This is a great quality watercolor paper. I tested it just with watercolor, no images or anything, just to see how much sizing the paper had in it. So I wanted to know how well the pigments would move across the paper, whether it would stain, if it would lift too easy. This is good paper, y'all, good paper. All right, so here you can see I now have a mirrored image on the top and the bottom of that image. Love it. Absolutely love this. So easy. When I tell you guys that this is it's foolproof. The only way that you can, I haven't messed one up yet, so I couldn't even tell you the only way to mess it up. I was about to tell you the only way, but I haven't messed up yet. Crazy, I know. So this is the recommended use. This is what it was developed to do. But let's face it, none of us wants to spend $80 on a one-trick pony. So of course that means I need to find out what else you can do with this system, right? Before I can recommend it as something that you definitely have to have in your craft room, I need to know that it goes beyond its intended use. And we're going to get to that. First, I'm going to show you how to clean your plates. I'm using some Simon Says Stamp Ultra Clean. This does have a dauber on the top. I've ripped mine off at some point. I never use anything the way it's intended. So if you want to know how to break things, I can certainly tell you. Keep watching our channel. Or better yet, check out our lives on Facebook because I'm always breaking something in our lives. It's just the way I roll. I'm a rebel. So you're going to use that Ultra Clean and a soft cloth here. I rub it around to get all of the ink moving around and dislodged from that plate. I spray it with water and then I clean it off. That's it. I haven't had any trouble with plates being stained. And honestly, if you're never going to use anything but your black ink, you don't even have to clean it, y'all. Only clean it when you're going to switch colors. It's waterproof, so it's not going anywhere. All right, so clean off any of the mess on your system itself. I've noticed the Ultra Clean takes it all off. I haven't had any issue. And then you'll also want to clean your platen. So let's do another run here. And there is something that I have discovered since this video that I do now a little bit differently. Here you can see I'm setting up my next design. I'm going to put my paper down and I'm going to put my tape on the back of the cardstock. What I have now since switched to doing is I put the rolled washi tape on the four corners of my platen and I just leave it there. So my platen is always set up for me to just stick a new piece of paper onto it. Instead of putting the tape on the back of the paper, I now put it on the platen and I just leave it there until it loses its stickiness or it wears out and then I replace that piece. So that's one update that I can give since filming this. All right, so right now, Spellbinders has 8 shades of specially formulated ink, and it is fantastic ink. It is designed to work with the system. It is amazing. But can you use different inks? Yes, yes you can. So this is the Be Creative Metallic Gold Pigment Ink. I found this to work amazing with the system. And that's to be expected with a pigment ink because they are a thicker formula. However, most pigment inks have a very squishy foam pad. This has a much more firm foam pad, so it is very easy for me to control the amount of ink that I'm transferring to the plate. You do not want to mash the pad into the plate. I cannot stress that enough. You just want to cover the raised surface of the plate with the ink so that when you run it through your system, the ink is transferred to the paper. A couple of other pads that I found that are really great to use with this in terms of pigment inks, the oxides, the Distress Oxide ink pads, because they are a felt pad, they're very easy to use with this and they work beautifully. So that's something that I know a lot of you already own, and you could extend your colors of ink using those here as well. So here you can see that gorgeous transfer. There are no bare spots, there's no skips. And if I had inked incomplete and I missed some areas, I could just re-ink my plate, put my platen back down and run that through again. And because we have that magnetic, the magnetic connections there, I know that nothing has moved and it's all going to stay in exactly the same spot. Okay, so let's take a look at this gold on black paper because this is where the metallic aspect is really going to shine. The Stonehenge watercolor black paper is a little bit thicker than the watercolor paper designed for the BetterPress system. And because of that, we're going to have a little bit of increased pressure. You'll notice that my plate is hanging off the edge of my paper. So when I run this through my die cutting machine, the plate is making direct contact with my platen. And you'll see here when I put this down, you can see on the right side there, it hangs over a little bit. Now I discovered that with too much pressure, you will cut into your top platen. So here, although this worked beautifully, it transferred the image, I am getting a little bit of buckling within the image, and I can see here that my plate cut into my platen just a little bit. So that tells me I have a little bit too much pressure. But no worries because, and this is one of the things I love about this system, they thought through different thicknesses of substrates. So all I have to do is remove my shims from underneath that magnetic base, and then I can go about my business. Again, one of my favorite aspects of this because it really opens up the substrates that I can use to letterpress on. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and ink this up. We're going to rotate that plate so that I can see the difference and make sure that I'm still getting a letterpress and an image transfer. And you can see that I still get a beautiful image transfer, but this way my plate isn't damaged and my paper hasn't buckled at all. So I'm getting good pressure and ink transfer, whereas over here you can see how the paper buckled a little bit. It was because the pressure was just a little too much. And it's not the end of the world. Both are absolutely usable, but it is just one of those touches that I am so impressed with on this system. The fact that they allowed for shims to be inserted and removed so that you could expand your substrates, I thought was very well thought out. So here you can see that metallic ink on both the black and the white. And again, we're still just using watercolor paper here, but with heat setting this, I can watercolor this. That ink is waterproof once heat set. Or I could use colored pencils, or I could use Copics. So I've now opened up my mediums. And then when you look at all of these side by side, you've got the black ink with the transferred image, and then you've got the gold on both the black and the white. And this is essentially using it like a stamp. We're transferring an image that we can then add color to. Or leave it uncolored, and it's equally as beautiful. Speaking of, let's take a look at a technique called blind letterpress. This is where you transfer the image with no ink. I've made sure that my plate is clean. I've set up my BetterPress here, and I am going to just put that through my platinum. Remember, I've put 0 ink on this plate. What we're going to get is a beautiful debossed impression into the paper. This paper receives the plates beautifully. We're going to get a nice, deeply etched impression into this paper with zero ink. Look at how beautiful that is. Look at all that depth and detail. These plates, the detail on them is absolutely amazing, you guys. Absolutely amazing. So this is elegant all on its own. You could just mat this on a card base and be done with it. But we've essentially turned this into kind of an embossing folder, right? So an embossing plate. The problem with an embossing folder is that you can't stamp your sentiment right over an embossed area. You will not get a clean impression. However, with letterpress, we can letterpress right on top of our previous letterpressing. So here, I'm going to take the sentiment included in that plate set. I'm going to line that up on my BetterPress base here, ink that up using the black BetterPress ink, and then we're going to just impress that right over our previously letterpressed area. And guys, look at this, zero degradation in the impression that we left in the paper before, and the sentiment is still 100% legible. This you could not do with an embossing folder and a stamp, but we are using the letterpress system like an embossing folder and a stamp, but better. Otherwise, we would have to use a die cut sentiment to put over top, or we would have to layer the sentiment on another piece of cardstock. If you want it darker, you can simply re-ink your plate and send it through again. Look at that. Perfect quote unquote double stamping. Guys, this one right here this might be the technique that put it over the moon for me. And actually this is getting me thinking, like, I wonder if I could do an embossed background with an embossing folder, put that into my BetterPress, and then use a large solid sentiment plate and letterpress that over top without losing any legibility and without flattening my background. I'm writing that one down. That'll be one to try here coming up. All right, so of course I had to try it with another plate. Here is the Butterfly Garden Press plate. This one is one of my favorites that they've come out with so far. I love this one. It's got two plates. It's got a separate border area and then your sentiment area. And then there are 3 dies to cut out portions of your sentiment area. So this is a good one. It's currently sold out, but I would definitely put a notify me on that one and snatch it up as soon as it comes in stock, because this one is good. And perhaps you're telling me, Dawn, I don't want another machine. I'm not getting the BetterPress. I'm not impressed with letterpress. It's something I would never do. That's totally understandable, right? Not everything is for everybody. But I'm telling you, this machine is versatile. And even if you don't want the system itself, do not sleep on the products that go with it, you guys. The ink is amazing. It's waterproof, so it's going to be great for your watercoloring. It's going to be great for mixed media. The paper, high quality. If you're looking for a good watercolor paper in beautiful colors, this pebble, the bisque, and the porcelain, they all watercolor beautifully, and they're all high quality. That's a good one. The plates. If you have a glimmer machine, you do not want to sleep on these plates. And I'm going to show you here how beautifully they foil. So I'm going to take that piece that I did the blind letterpress around the outside. I've lined up the inner portion right in that center area that has been left open by the plate. We're going to put our foil down and we're going to go through the foiling steps. Now, the thing that blew me away about these plates is the amount of detail that the foil transfers. So the glimmer plates I thought were really detailed, right? I've never had any complaints with the glimmer plates. But these plates are even more detailed, and the foil transfers amazing. There is no image loss in the transfer. So you will have some cleanup work, just like your normal foiling process, but the small lines that the foiling was able to transfer, I was extremely impressed with. So I just clean up any overfoiling with the Mono Sand Eraser, and it's good to go. And like I mentioned, you can see all of that fine line detail that the foiling was able to capture, and it looks beautiful with that blind letterpress in the background. I just love this right here. One of my favorites. The combo of that deep impression with that crisp foiling, it's just heaven. And my next question was, can I do this on regular cardstock and still get a good foiled impression? And the answer is yes. So here I have 80-pound Neenah Super Smooth cardstock, and I foiled that butterfly garden plate, and wow. Just wow, you guys. Look at how gorgeous that is. And if I pull it up closer here to the camera, you can really see all of the detail packed into this plate and how beautifully it transferred. This, I have plans for this particular foil. I have plans for this one. So good. Okay, so now we know we can use these plates with 80-pound Neenah Solar White. So I was like, I wonder if we can heat emboss. We did letterpress, which is basically a dry emboss. Let's try heat embossing. So I have the Neenah Super Smooth 80-pound paper. I've put it on my platen. I have all of my shims removed from underneath my platform because I just want to transfer the ink. I don't want to make an impression. So I just want that plate to make contact with the paper to transfer the ink. Now my ink of choice for this one is the Be Creative embossing ink from Honeybee Stamps. I like the pad on this one. Again, Versamark, I love my Versamark, but it has a much softer, spongier pad. This one has a much firmer foam pad, so I have less chance of pushing that pad and distributing that ink into the grooves of the plate. I'm going to run this through, and then we're going to go through the heat embossing steps and see what we get. And you may be asking, but Dawn, why are you doing this when I can just do this with a stamp? Yeah, absolutely. You could totally heat emboss with a stamp, but you're not necessarily going to have this plate design. So I wanted to see how far you could stretch the materials and the system itself, right? We want to get as many uses out of our supplies as we can. So this right here will allow me to use this plate design with a heat embossed image, and then I can do Copic coloring, because you don't want to use Copic coloring with the letterpress ink because they are both solvent based and the ink will bleed. This way, if I want to, I can heat emboss this image and I can do Copic coloring, or I can heat emboss this image on watercolor paper and do watercoloring. So here I'm showing you the difference between using the shims underneath and the shims without. So on the left is without shims and on the right was with shims. By eliminating the letterpress portion, my embossing is on top of the paper versus being pressed into the paper. So I have a more raised, more clean, crisp, and clean image. So I would say for heat embossing, make sure you remove your shims and use a thinner paper. So let's do a quick recap of some of the techniques that we tried, and then we'll look at the finished cards. So here we have our classic letterpress. This is on their porcelain watercolor paper using their black ink. This is on their pebble watercolor paper using their wildberry ink. That is a gorgeous, gorgeous color, and I especially love it paired with the pebble. And of course, I tried a lot of different inks. This here, we used it just like a stamp. We used that 80-pound Super Smooth. We removed our shims so that it is not making an impression, and we used the Pure Color dye ink from W+9. So make sure you try all of the inks that you have. You never know what will work. I love having the option to use it as just a stamp. This is the bisque watercolor paper with the Honeybee Stamps gold metallic pigment ink. Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. And then for contrast here, and just to show you the difference, this is that same metallic ink, but this is on their porcelain watercolor cardstock. So here we have the porcelain and the bisque side by side. Absolutely gorgeous. But of course, those metallics are always going to stand out best on darker cardstock. So here we have that metallic pigment, that gold metallic ink on the black watercolor cardstock. Absolutely stunning. There is no color even necessary here, but again, if you wanted to heat set it, it will be waterproof and you can watercolor away. Absolutely gorgeous. Have I said that enough? Absolutely gorgeous. Oh, then we have our blind letterpress and letterpress over our letterpress. I told y'all this one is my favorite. I cannot wait to try to combine different colored portions of letterpress. This one right here is a game changer for me, you guys. Love, love, love it. Of course, we've got the foiling. This is on the 80-pound Nina Super Smooth. Beautiful. Like I said, I have plans for this look right here, this exact foil and a really detailed plate. I'm putting this one in my back pocket. And then, of course, we used it to do some heat embossing, which worked beautifully. Again, on that Nina paper, removing those shims, so we're using the plate as a stamp. And I think it's probably obvious by now that I think that the BetterPress system is worth the hype. She is definitely not a one-trick pony. Here are the finished cards that I created using the sample pieces that I created in the video. Remember, these were all test pieces, and the majority of them I can use to create cards, and I did just that. So here is the black BetterPress ink on their porcelain cardstock, and then watercolored with Concord and 9th liquid watercolors. I do want to point out the die cutting. If your top plate is marked up, you will get marks transferred to your watercolor paper when you go to die cut these, but I have a hack for it. I have a fix. I have discovered a fix for it, and I will have a video coming for that soon. So make sure that you are subscribed and you hit the notifications so that you will be notified when that video is uploaded. Again, simple, elegant. You don't need to do much. You can do all of the watercoloring if you want, like I did, but you can simply leave these naked, leave them uncolored, and they are beautiful. There is something extremely elegant about just that simple letterpress, especially when you pair it with this gold metallic card, this gold metallic ink. Absolutely beautiful, and you don't have to do more if you don't want to. But if you do, you can add the color medium of your choice. Here I did some colored pencil. Now there was a trick to this one. If you letterpress this first with the ink and you put the colored pencil over that, you will cover up your ink. So what I did was a blind letterpress, did my colored pencil, left everything in place. I left my paper taped to the platen, colored it while it was on the platen. Once it was done, I then inked up my plate and then ran it through the letterpress again with that gold pigment ink. This transferred my design, my ink on top of my colored pencil and put all of my detail in. So that's the trick to doing colored pencil with the ink transfer. Super easy as long as you keep everything taped into place. All right, so I'm just going to let you guys take a look at these finished cards, and I wanted to say thank you for joining. Hopefully you learned something new about the BetterPress. I know I'm not the first video out there. I'm not even the 100th video out there. I'm bringing up the rear, you guys. But I wanted to give this a good workout, and again, I wanted to push it and see what else I could do with it. And I am sure there is more that I have not discovered yet, and that's okay because she's not going anywhere. She is going to be a permanent fixture on my craft table, and I'm going to get a lot of use out of her. Now, if there's any other questions that you have or something that you saw here that I didn't explain, make sure you ask in the comments below. I will answer any questions. I want to thank you guys for all of this super kind and sweet and encouraging comments that you guys have been leaving. I will get around to answering any questions that you guys have, but I wanted to thank you for the comments. They really mean a lot. If you decide that you're going to be out shopping this weekend, I will have some links in the description box to some sales that are going down. Great sales are going down right now for the holiday weekend, the July 4th weekend, so make sure that you check down there for any that are currently happening. And I'll also have the links to all the supplies that I used on today's card there as well. So if you're looking for anything, make sure to check that video description. I'd love to know what your favorite letterpress technique is for the BetterPress. So make sure you leave that in the comments. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful and safe holiday, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.